My violin background started when I was about 5. My mom started me in Suzuki violin method, and I just went to weekly lessons with my mom, which I loved doing because I come from a family of 8 children. And when I went to violin lessons, that was my one-on-one time with my mom. It was like my special time. And so that in and of itself, that relationship connection made violin really all the more special for me. And I continued studying violin up until college. I played in some youth orchestras and such. And then when I got to college, I majored in elementary education and taught school for some years. Then I went back to work on a master's in violin performance and learned so much there, and learned, by the way, it's best to have a music bachelor's degree before jumping to a music master's degree. It was kind of tricky. And I didn't end up finishing because I ended up chasing a boy and eventually getting married and having kids. But now I teach, I have taught Suzuki method to lots and lots of kids. And I closed my studio about 8 years ago when I started having my own children. And now I practice with my own kids. And that takes all my time instead of teaching other people's kids, but I love it. My twin boys play the cello. My daughter Grace plays the harp. And my baby, we shall see. And then I also play with the orchestra at Temple Square and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which is a broadcast on Sunday mornings. It's the longest running broadcast in the United States. So it's fun if you ever want to tune into that.
That's cool. Yeah. And that is a perfect lead up to my first topic for you. And I have always been fascinated by parents that are able to teach their own kids. I guess partly because I know that would not have worked for me. And I mean, my parents knew some music. They could have taught me some of it, but they didn't. They just had outside teachers. And honestly, for me, because I was actually homeschooled, that was my only outside teachers that I interacted with. And so kind of like what you were saying, where it was your one-on-one time with your mom, for me, it was like my only time with an outside mentor other than my mom, I guess. So, yeah. But, you know, and I've thought about it with, like, my brother has kids, he could teach them, but he has me teach them. And so anyways, I'm just curious how you make that relationship work. And for those that might want to do that, what kind of tips you might have for them.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I love to share about this. Maybe I wasn't super clear. My kids actually do go to a private teacher once a week, but I practice with them every day. And then it comes down to really, if I see skills that I want them to work on that haven't been noticed by the private teacher, then I'll pull them in. Or, you know, so I do a lot of teaching, but I do think it's so helpful to have someone who is objective, someone that's not part of the home, giving assignments and giving recommendations and giving encouragement, because for me, that I'm doing that so much of the day already that my face just becomes like a talking head and they start to tune out. So when we do go to a weekly lesson, I think it really helps revamp their focus, and it gives some credibility to mom. Like, oh, mom says that at home. Oh, I've heard that before. Maybe mom's right. But for people that do take on the responsibility of teaching their own children and practicing at home, I just think that's so commendable. And I do think it can be done. There have been times with my kids where we've been in transition from one teacher to another. And so I've taken on all of the teaching and practicing. And it takes so much energy and work and a lot of mental and emotional capacity. But I think keeping the end goal in mind is what keeps a mom going in that process. Knowing that it's not necessarily about getting the curved fingers or the perfect vibrato, but what I want for my children is the end result for them to be a beautiful human being someone who's responsible, someone who can focus on a task, or remembering that in the end, you're hoping your child will eventually be able to problem solve as they've learned to do so in their music, problem solve elsewhere in life and break big tasks into small little pieces. Or, you know, just remembering that in the end, you're hoping to have a well-rounded, sensitive, very selfless human. And it's about so much more than just the violin. So for me, like when we get in the trenches of practicing and teaching, sometimes I just have to step back and remember that end goal.
Yeah, I love that because, and I was actually just talking to somebody about that last night. I had an opportunity to play for an audience of one, which is always, you know, it can be awkward, but it can be really fun. And this one was really fun. But afterwards, they were kind of like, and you have people signing up to learn what you know. And I thought, well, it's not really even the instrument. It's all of these characters, all the character development, all the, you know, the discipline, the consistency. That's where the value is. Yeah, it's great to be able to play the instrument, but just like you're saying, it's making a beautiful person that can take on whatever challenges of life.
I agree. I also recently read about, who was it? I think Ed Sprunger, no. It's some book I can reference to you later, but he talks about how he was asked to speak to a group of parents, and he asked them, is your end goal to create a professional musician? And not one person in the room raised their hands. You know, and they ended up making lists upon lists of all of the attributes they hoped that their children would gain through musical study, but that being a professional musician wasn't their end goal. And I think it's the same for adults. I think you have a lot of adult learners, right?
I do, yeah.
And I think also as an adult learner, remembering that as I practice each day, I am making progress. Even if the song doesn't have progress, I have committed myself and I'm fulfilling a goal. And it's character development for all ages.
Right. Yes. So true. So good. Exactly. So another thing I wanted to talk about was you mentioned the vulnerability that's involved as a musician in order to share music of any kind, whether you're playing by ear or with music or improvising something on the spot. Whatever it is, you are creating music and putting your personal touch on it. And so it is vulnerable to share it. And a lot of people, tons of people, and I think especially in the adult learning circle, they don't want to share it. And I don't think it's because they don't want to share it. It's because they recognize that vulnerability and they don't, you know, as an adult already, they have never experienced sharing in that vulnerable way. And so it's too big of a roadblock. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts to help people put themselves out there and begin to love sharing music and that vulnerability, because I mean, who wants to, you know, open their journal basically and show it to the world, which is kind of what we do with our music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's well said. It is like opening up your journal or opening up the doors to your cellar where you do want to keep some things hidden.
Yeah.
The great thing is you can choose which piece you're going to share, right?
Right.
But it can take a lot of capacity to go from being worried about what people think and recognizing this is a gift I want to give them. So something that helps me get past vulnerability in a performance or a presentation is remembering the why. And the reason why I share my music is because I love the music and I love the people. And so that promotes me to get past barriers. If I remember, I'm not doing this to appear perfect. Perfectionism is all about trying to earn approval from other people. It's not the key to success. Being perfect is correlated with depression and anxiety and so many mental health issues. But the reason I share my music is not to prove perfectionism, but exactly opposite of that, to prove that I'm a normal human being and I'm wanting to give of myself because I love my music and I love the people. So maybe asking why am I doing this music, or why do I feel vulnerable? Um, I think there's so much psychology behind performing. In fact, when I was doing the master's degree in violin performance, they would have the students take a sports psychology class, because there's so much psychology about sports performance, and reading about that and learning about that can help us in our musical performance psychology. But I think being vulnerable really comes down to a fear of not meeting people's expectations, and it keeps us from progress. And so just really looking at why we want to do this will help us with that feeling of worry of what other people think.
Right. Yeah, I like that answer. It's and it's also that question of why am I doing this? I ask my students that a lot, because if you don't know why you're doing it, then maybe you won't do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think the why can change, you know. I think we go through different seasons of development and growth, and why I performed as a child is vastly different than why I perform now. And um, asking ourselves why consistently, I think, is healthy. Like, why would I perform this for this group? Let me think about that, because that will give me the confidence when I go there. Well, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yes. Um, I love that too. So, um, anyway, let's kind of wrap up and then open it up if Anne has any questions or if anybody else happens to jump in right now. But what would you say are 3 favorite, like you share a lot of games on your Instagram, you know, for teaching the different techniques, and also just in general teaching tips that you like to use, that are like your favorites when you're teaching?
Okay. Um, well, what comes to mind first is the power of a story.
Mm.
So I think it's applicable to adult learners and children. Being able to attach a story to a song makes the song much more alive and creates a lot more expression in our playing, in our music production. So whether it's helping scaffold a child with their story idea and take it through the whole song, or it's me just making up a story with them with imagery and description as they play, I think is an exciting journey for kids. So that's probably like, takes a lot of capacity sometimes to have the energy to do that. But imagery and storytelling, I really love doing that. Visuals, um, I I realized just a few months ago that I was drawing stop signs or drawing the form of a piece, ABC back to A. I was drawing so many things. And so I've started doing printables that I use with my kids. And so my boy's cello teacher saw the printables, pictures and graphics. And he said, oh, can I get some of those from, I think this would help my other students. So that's something I really use a lot too, printables. I have a website up that has some of the printables on it. And then another thing, I know this doesn't, not everyone would agree with me, but I think rewards are really powerful. And as kids, candy, pretend money, prizes, I use those a lot. So that's extrinsic motivation, but I firmly believe that it transitions to intrinsic motivation, and that as we grow, we receive rewards in other ways. So for adults, you know, identifying what are my rewards? Do I feel good about this? Did I make progress? Did I get to learn something new? So I guess the third game, if you will, is just reward system. It's
I
really
like that.
powerful.
Yeah, and I think I've kind of tried to incorporate that with my students, not necessarily me giving them rewards, but encouraging them to figure out what a reward is for themselves, that when they meet this goal or an accomplishment, I actually like to take it a step further and encourage them to actually, you know, do something special for themselves.
Yeah.
Go buy something that you've been wanting to buy, or um, go do something simpler, not as expensive, you know, whatever it might be.
I think even in the musical genre, as a reward for an adult could be, I'm finally going to go see my favorite musician perform. You
Right.
know, I'm finally deserve those tickets. I worked for them.
Yeah.
Or something I'm kind of preserving as a reward for myself is I want to record a CD. And so I'm gradually working on pieces for a recording. And that will be such a reward for myself when I get to that point to have a CD.
Sure.
Yeah, I just think rewards are powerful. And I don't think there's shame in having rewards because, you know, if they're presented in the right way.
Well, and I think where I learned that was when I started getting really active with fitness, because when you finish a fitness program, any coach is going to encourage you to, you know, go have a splurge or get a pedicure or get a massage or, you know, whatever. Do
Yeah.
something nice for your body because you worked so hard. And it's the same. We're kind of athletes too with our music. And I just think it's really valuable to take time to figure out what motivates you that way. What kind of reward is going to motivate you to do the hard work?
Yeah, I agree.
Or what kind of reward are you going to be disappointed that you don't get for yourself because you didn't do the work?
Yeah, that's true. Looking at it on the flip side.
Yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, those are all great ideas. I loved this conversation. Anne, did you have any thoughts or questions you want to talk with Tiffany about?
I have, yeah, maybe more a thought. It's not clear to me yet if it will turn into a question or something. I was a little bit surprised about this discussion on vulnerability because I think I wouldn't really feel so vulnerable about sharing a piece of music, even if it touches me. I would, I don't know, I think I would do it to the best of my ability because I think that's part of how the music deserves to be played, right? And I would certainly have some I don't know, limits or reservations or whatever, so it wouldn't be perfect, but I wouldn't shy away from doing that. But I would certainly feel vulnerable, or it has been difficult for me to come to the mindset that I, as an amateur who, I don't know, has many technical limitations, goes and plays for people, right? So who am I to play for people? Or so that has been the thing where I felt the most vulnerable, like it is something that maybe I'm taking something up that I don't deserve, or so. These kind of thoughts would be more on my mind. So
Some pieces of music you would feel comfortable sharing, and others you would be worried about your technical ability?
No. I think I would just, in a sense, feel like not like an imposter or some kind of, I don't know, just to play, right? So, I mean, who wants to hear what I have to say? Like more like along these lines, right?
Well, yeah, I think that's a really natural feeling to feel like an imposter, like you say, or is this what the composer, is this how he wanted it? You know? But I wonder if we think about the composer's perspective, if I wrote a piece, I think I would feel absolutely honored with whoever attempted to share it. I wonder if that isn't how some composers would feel. Just great gratification to see it being shared. And it's not written for one person, it's written for the world, right? And so we can't be an imposter if a composer has gifted this composition for anyone to play, they get to play it in their way. You get to play it in Anne's way, which is completely different than Suzanne's way or Tiffany's way. And you put your own touch on it, which makes it partially yours. You gain some ownership over that piece when you play it. And I think it's also important to remember when we're feeling vulnerable that honestly, most people that listen to us want to hear us, and they want us to succeed. Most people that are listeners aren't critics. Most of them have our goodwill in mind, and they want to share that human experience and connect with you through that music and those feelings. Because music has so many emotions. It's like watching a movie, right? We love to watch movies because there's highs and lows and excitement and thrill and then steady and calm. And that's how music is. Music will draw your listener in, and then they'll probably realize, oh, that's how Anne does it. I like how Anne does it. That's a lot different than that recording I've heard way too many times of that piece. I like Anne's version. I don't think you're ever an imposter when you're seeking to share. That's how. So.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, and exactly what she said, you know, because I think, Anne, you said, you know, who wants to listen, right? Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm not forcing anyone to listen, so maybe nobody's there, but it's just this. Yeah.
But, you know, I think that the majority of the time, the people that are, well, and especially for you, because most of your sharing of music is through the YouTube channel or a live video or whatever, and that's totally optional for somebody to push play, right? But even when you have an audience or you're playing in a recital and the people have come to the recital maybe to hear the other student and then they hear you too, those kind of people are supportive of the learning process and they still want to hear. And I think that there's something about hearing. It's kind of like somebody recently said, and it might have, I don't know who it was, that, you know, when you make a mistake, it just shows that you're human. And there's something life-giving about that, you know, to be able to watch somebody that's in the process and they're willing to play and share. No, like Tiffany said, they're not critics. They enjoy that part too.
Yeah. So I mean, what's kind of helping me is just the idea that I don't have to pretend, so I can just go out there and do whatever I do, right? And it doesn't have to be any kind of hype or anything that is kind of, I don't know, I can just do it at face value, so to speak, and expect that people hear what they hear and they can, I mean, can boo or not, or leave or applaud. It's not really so important, right? And I think that playing music, even, I don't know, in some contexts, when you learn, like in this with a teacher who has maybe aspirations of educating the next soloist or something, then there will also always be this kind of extra expectations that something has to be, I don't know, fabulous or in some sense, and that's a lot of pressure that comes from outside, and it's really not necessary, right, to subject myself to that. But that took some time to get rid of these kind of expectations, right?
Yeah, but how great that you see that growth that you went through to realize these are other people's expectations. These are not my expectations. So you see that growth in yourself, and you've overcome a hurdle to be able to recognize, I don't have to do this how they want it. I can do it in my way. And I think that's so refreshing. There's so many perfect YouTube videos that have been edited and dubbed and that are not natural. I think it's refreshing, like Suzanne said, when you see a performer make a mistake, I think most people feel like, good job, you kept going after your mistake. I mean, it binds you to your audience because they see you as approachable and human all of a sudden. When I was in college playing in the symphony orchestra, we were playing, what's that song? It's played at graduation ceremonies, Pomp and Circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire orchestra got off beat. Like we were totally off. I've never had this happen before. And the conductor actually stopped all, 150 players stopped us and started again. And guess what? It was our best performance ever because we realized as a whole, we made a big mistake. We're human, and we got that out of our system, and then we were able to really do our best.
Mm. Okay, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
It happens.
The audience loves it when things happen like that. It reminds me actually of a public speaker on a certain subject that I follow, and she said that it's absolutely her favorite thing when, you know, she has a speech prepared or whatever for this huge audience, and then something goes wrong, like the background music won't play or the mics won't work or whatever, and the audience loves it because then you have to see how the person really is right in the moment and how they're going to deal with what's going on. And it's just, yeah, people
I
like
think it just creates compassion. I really do. I think it creates compassion and connection when people see that we're like them, like we're all really humans and no one's a perfect robot.
Yeah, so anyways, thank you so much, Tiffany. Let's go ahead and wrap up, and then we'll check over on Facebook to make sure that we didn't miss any questions that got commented and things like that. But this has been a pretty good discussion, and thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Anne, for joining us too.
Thank you. It was so fun. You guys are wonderful. Keep up the good work.